and it means you're going to move forward. But what we don't know is the direction. So what we're hoping to do today is use some data and some experiences to share with you some knowledge that can help you on your own journey as you go through or continue on the frontier of your ERG work. So if you look at what's going on in the world with ERGs today, there's a lot in the headlines, and there's a lot of positive information. When we talk to the individuals who we're working with, what we learn is a lot of companies are starting ERGs that have not had them before. We see new ERGs coming on the scene, and we also see a large percentage of organizations that are expanding, globalizing, and doing new work. Now, at the same time, they are not without controversy. So this slide just picks up one article that started to talk about the pros and cons of ERGs. And as many of you probably know, last year there was some big news that got people really thinking about, well, are ERGs the right way to go or not? When Deloitte announced that they were getting rid of their ERGs, and again, a lot of conversation. Now, from my own personal point of view, most of the data I've seen shows that they're doing a lot of positive work, but you don't want to just hear from me and my opinion. But you know what we need to do is be able to go through that frontier based on something more than just a few people's personal insights. And so we really want to be able to inform our decisions based on data. And that's what we're going to do today, because having data, learning from others is really important. And when I think about data, again, it's not just numbers. So even though we love, well, as scientists of the world, we love quantitative data, the qualitative data that we use is also really important. You know, how are ERGs working in other organizations? What are the trends that we're seeing? You know, what are the stories that we can learn from? When you can take the data and the numbers, can combine them with stories, then you get better information to help you navigate that frontier. And one of the ways that we've been able to pull together both very high quality quantitative data with the qualitative data is through something we started in 2012, which is called the ERG Leadership Summit. And hopefully a lot of you on the phone call have been to one of these events. The idea was to get together leaders of ERGs in various organizations so we could learn from each other. And in addition to a two-day meeting where we're sharing stories, learning from case studies, and more, we also have every year conducted a survey of the members of the ERGs. And in some companies, we've even collected data from a random sample of non-members. So we've been able to inform the summit and provide the participants with something that's really useful to go back to work and make changes and then measure whether it worked or not, which is really important in our ERG work. So as you can see, in 2012, we started with 70 participants, and last year in 2017, we had 170. So every year it's growing, the knowledge is growing, and we've got some data that we've trended. We also have data that's very specific for that year covering the theme. And I'm going to be sharing with you today some of the data from the last project in 2017. So 2018 is upon us, and we are working toward our ERG Leadership Summit for this year. The theme this year is going to be ERG Striving Growth. And when we think about growth, there are three different dimensions we're focusing on. Growing your talent through what they're doing in their ERGs. Growing ERG membership, that's been a theme that comes up a lot. How do we grow our membership? How do we sustain interest? Very important. And maybe most important, how do ERGs work together to grow the business, add new products, grow the quality and service, and yes, grow profitability in the bottom line. So those are the things that we're going to be focusing on with our theme. Now, just to give you a sense of the kind of companies that we've been collecting data from and that have attended, this is a list of some of the logos of the companies in the 2017 program. Now, what you can't see from the logos is where these companies are in their ERG journeys. So I mean, I love it that we have multiple industries. We have smaller and larger size companies, and we also have a number of companies that are just starting their first ERGs, and then again, we have some that have very long history. So it's been very informative to talk to people in all these different stages of ERG growth, and then also how they're using the ERGs in different kinds of businesses. And we're very honored to be hosted this year by Amazon. So if you think about growth as a theme, Amazon is an awesome example of a company that's growing and growing very quickly. And their ERGs are growing. The business is obviously expanding. You know, we read about them in the news almost every day. So we will be in Seattle again. We don't have the exact date pinned down, but we're looking at end of June, beginning of July. So it'll be this summer in Seattle at Amazon. I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to it, and I'm sure many of you are too. So again, just to reiterate our goals for the day, we're thinking about where ERGs are. And again, I'm using ERG, Employee Resource Groups. There are many names that organizations are customizing for them, but I'm just going to continue to use that term as we work through the webinar. We're interested in what's next. We're interested in what's the journey that's going to work. So in order to inform that, I'm going to share some data with you, and then we're going to zoom in on the Royal Bank of Canada case study so we can learn from them. And then afterwards, we're going to have time to hear from you and to have some discussion and Q&A at the end. I just wanted to give you a sense first of what we've learned overall since we've been doing this research in 2012. One thing is that it's pretty easy to add knowledge to this domain because there is very little research on ERGs, which is really surprising when you look at the number of universities and also how long, and businesses that are doing research. And ERGs have been in existence since the 1960s, but I just finished a literature review with a couple other professors I've been working with, and I'll tell you, it is the shortest literature review I have ever done. There's just not much work there. So we really, as researchers and scientists and people who are learning, we're on the frontier of understanding ERGs. And there's some things that we have learned with this data. So from company to company, 2012 to today, what we continue to see is that being in ERG energizes employees and engages them. So scores on any kind of survey you do on engagement are higher, at least we've seen are higher for ERG members. And the reason we hypothesize that's happening is because in the ERG, they tell us they can bring their best selves to work. I can be who I really am. I'm not inhibited, and that's important for motivation. It's also important for innovation. So that's why we're seeing so many ERGs coming up with ideas for new products, for better services, and new ways to work together. Because when you're in your ERG, we find they're more willing to take risks because there's an increase to higher comfort level. And as a result of that, we're getting more output. And what the other cool thing we're seeing is that people are innovating in their ERG, and then they build confidence, and they're bringing that to the job afterwards. The other thing we've seen over time is that the ERG leaders are using the data we're providing to them to focus their efforts for the following year, and we're seeing some improvement as a result of that. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, there's pros and cons of everything, and we have seen a little bit of negative comments in some of the data we're doing. And basically, there is a resentment from people who are not in an ERG. In fact, my favorite quote was from someone who said, this is a quote, "I hate ERGs," and then a few sentences later said, "Oh, by the way, I really don't know what an ERG is." But it sounded like something really special that I wasn't part of. And that's the issue, and that's why I think there's controversy now, because we're trying to drive inclusion. But in some ways, ERGs do exclude people. And again, we're working our way through that with Ally and additional ERGs. So let me talk about the data. In 2017, our survey covered almost 1,000 people, and it was a mix of ERG leaders and non-ERG leaders. We were happy that we got data from 37 different companies. And all in all, when you look at it, it's a very good representative sample. So that makes us feel confident about the conclusions we're going to be able to come to. And then I'll let you know, the survey has lots and lots of components. I'm only going to go over two key areas today. And if anybody wants to learn more, we're happy to provide you with additional information. One of the themes for last year was something called covering. We were getting a lot of feedback that this has been an important topic for ERGs, that people in organizations feel like they're covering at work, which means they pretend they're somebody they're not, or they're hiding who they are. And again, that leads to negative outcomes. So we added to our survey work 2 psychological constructs that tapped into covering. And one is this authenticity index, and on that you want a higher score. So if you have a high score, people feel good about being able to be honest and open about who they are. And then there's another one that's called cognitive dissonance, and people feeling anxious. So you want a low score on that because you don't want your employees feeling nervous about being able to be themselves at work. And just to give you a sense of the overall results, the orange line you're looking at is cognitive dissonance, and the blue is authenticity. So these are the means for the different ERG types that were in the survey. The scale goes from 1 to 5. So immediately we see, gee, not everybody's at a 5. So some of the problems we see might not be all fixed, which means there's still opportunity for ERGs to help. And then the other thing you might notice is that there's differences for various groups. So some groups are doing better at being themselves or not having to do more covering, and other groups are struggling a little bit more. And again, you'll have this information available if you want to take a deeper dive later. I really just want to use this to say there's still more work for all of us to do. So if I go back to that debate, bringing your whole self to work, well, we're not quite there yet. So think about, how do we start the conversation? How do we learn? Well, ERGs are the perfect place to help. So I think this is an important topic that we still all need to work on, and ERGs are in a great place to do that. The second area of data I wanted to share with you is on something we call an impact model. We started doing that a couple years ago. The impact model was developed by interviews with ERG leaders asking what they're trying to do in their business. And we tried to come up with a short way to condense the different stories we were hearing from the interviews and put it into this 9-box that we use. So basically, what we're looking at is the ways ERGs can impact the individual member or the individual employee, the company, and the external stakeholders. So those are the 3 on the very top of the model, the three targets. And then there seemed to be 3 buckets of work that everyone was interested in impacting. So one was talent management, second was culture, and the third was vitality. And as you look at this, you'll see what we did was come up then with questions that focus on each of the boxes. So at the individual level in talent management, we're asking how an ERG impacts an individual employee's professional development. If I look at talent management companies, how does the ERG affect recruitment and selection at the company level? And then lastly, if I'm looking at talent management with my external stakeholders, how are the ERGs helping employees network outside the company and have an impact beyond the company's borders? And I'm not going to go through all the other ones, but it's the same logic. We wrote questions that we experimented with and then validated for each of the boxes, and that's what you're seeing on this slide. And you're also seeing the mean scores on each of these for the 2017 data. So the lowest score is the impact my ERG has on recruiting and selection. And this has been the same lowest score in every year. It's kind of interesting because when we talk to individual companies, they look at that and say, that's really interesting because we used to have our ERGs involved in recruiting, but then talent management grew as a big department in our company, and we kind of got away from that. And I've seen a number of companies, as a result of this, bring ERGs back into the talent management business. The highest scoring item is the impact ERG has on having an inclusive environment. And again, maybe that's not a surprise because that's where a lot of the focus was. So the net of this is, if you set this as a goal, if you say these things all are important, if we know their goals and we're then targeting our efforts, can you make a difference? And the answer was yes. What we saw was, this is the trend we've seen on each one of these questions since we started looking at the data, and all of them have gone up. So for the companies that are focusing on these items, who said this is what we want to have impact on, then worked on it, they're seeing a big improvement. And why is that important? Because ERGs need to have a measurable impact, and an impact on something that they know is going to drive the business performance. So we've been very happy to be able to see this over time. And when we do studies within companies, we've seen that same type of trend. So that's my tidbits from the data, the survey. And again, we have lots more from that data collection effort. If anybody's interested, happy to share some of that information. What I want to do next is hand it off to Ollie, who is going to talk through an example at his organization. And I'm, let's see, looking for, maybe what I'll do, Nora, is hand it back to you.
Yeah, that's fine. You can send it to me and I'll transfer it.
Okay, because I can't quite find Ollie on the long list.
No problem.
Thank you all for being there. Oh, there he is.
And actually, we have a question. I don't know if you want to address it now or at the end. From David Hernandez. It's down in the chat box.
All right, let me see it. So the question is, for the increased engagement of ERG members, does it matter what the ERG is doing or how it's positioned, or is it mere existence of membership engaging? So from what I know from the data, again, what I looked at is in an ERG, not in an ERG, and just being in an ERG has a higher score. Now, when I break it down and I look at different ERGs, I do see that some are having more of an increase than others, and likely it's related to what they're doing, but I don't have an answer for that right off the top of my head. What I clearly see over the years is ERG members have higher scores than non-ERG members. All right, Ollie, thanks so much for being here, and I think we're officially handed it off to you now.
Great, thank you, Theresa, and hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be joining you all on the call and to be able to share and connect with each of you. We appreciate the opportunity to highlight RBC, and I'll give you a quick rundown of who we are, where we are, and then share a few of the insights that we've been able to get from the ERG Impact Assessment and our involvement with the survey. So very quickly, if you're not aware, RBC Royal Bank of Canada, we are just, for those of you that are not sure, we're just a little bit further north of where you may be situated right now, based in Toronto, Canada is our head office. However, we are a global institution, and so we do have representation in offices across the globe. And in the U.S., we have both East Coast and West Coast presence as well. We've been recognized as one of the top 10 banks globally, and as I said, mentioned, we operate in 37 countries with over 80,000 employees and 16 million clients worldwide, which we're extremely proud of. The D&I journey at RBC has been a long and rich one, and I think that's one of the, I think also overall successes that we've seen in the growth of the D&I network, which has been a strength as far as when you grow and develop any type of D&I initiative, it does have to be a journey and not a destination. And so we want to just illustrate that, you know, over the last almost 40 years or so, there have been concentrated efforts and steps taken place on that timeline. And, you know, from an ERG perspective, our first ERGs were actually formed in the mid-90s with Royal Eagles, which is our indigenous employee resource group, being the first one that was formed. And then when we got into the 2000s, that's where we started to grow and build into some of the other ERGs being formed and being developed. The background to that, as I said, is that you do need to have a strong diversity network to help ERGs to not only be established, but to also thrive and flourish within the network. And so again, having some solid foundations has been a key factor into what we see our ERGs, the role that they play, but the success that they also have with employees within the organization as well. One of the main things and elements of the foundation for our diversity inclusion practice has been formed around our D&I blueprint, and if you go to our website, rbc.com/diversity, you can see a copy of the current iteration, which is the third blueprint that we've produced. And this helps to set out the organizational direction for diversity inclusion within RBC, but also the impact that we hope to achieve with our clients and in the communities that we serve. So we found, when we looked at the three main pillars around talent, clients, and communities, this is where we are focusing not only talent and resources, but also the direction of where we want to go. And it also aligns directly to our vision and values as an organization, because diversity inclusion is one of our 5 key values that, again, that we have almost ingrained into our DNA as a company, which is great to not only see from the employee's perspective, but also from a business perspective, and then from a broader scale to the clients and the communities that we serve and live and work in every day. Talking about employee resource groups specifically, we have around 34 groups globally that are set up, and then that does not factor into also any regional chapters or local chapters that are established. So from a national perspective, we have around 34 groups, ERG groups. Our membership count is 20,000 plus. And again, there are different forms of methodologies being used in engaging the ERGs, because not only are they active within their local markets from initiatives and programs that they are leading, but it's also then through having ongoing dialogue and conversation. So we achieve that through internal communication channels, through RBC Connect, which is those of you that may be using a Jive platform would be familiar with that, but it's a hybrid between a Facebook and a LinkedIn platform. It's sharing best practices and ideas. We also have a company-wide employee opinion survey each year, which again, there are certain questions coming out from that we're able to ascertain some D&I perspectives, which again help to form conversations with our employee resource groups. Ultimately, as I said, the D&I blueprint is our North Star for D&I, and so that again helps to be the guidance, but also the direction to where everybody can be successful, but also look towards to meeting the needs of their constituents when you look at specific ERG focuses and guides. As I mentioned at the start, this is our second year now of participating in the survey, and it's been extremely informative and helpful to us to get a sense and a pulse check around what ERG members are feeling, how they're interacting, and also getting to find out ways of how we can increase and improve the engagement, the connectivity, and the impact that they have to their constituents and to the organization. And so a few of the things that I'll highlight, and again, which again, I think those of you that have participated in the survey, or maybe this may be your first go around this year, I would say that it's again a highly beneficial and recommended tool that's been developed by Dr. Theresa and then her team to really give you the in-depth insights. The other thing that we were also able to benefit from, because this is a North America study, is that we do get to see some of the variations between what our US ERGs are feeling and thinking as opposed to the Canadian counterparts. So it was very, again, interesting and helpful for us to see overall where the overall results were from an organization perspective, and then being able to get that geographic divide. And what that helps us to do is a few things, is around when I speak to my counterparts in the different businesses in the US, is to look to see, again, sharing not only what is working for them with their ERGs, and then where can we then share those best practices and collaborate. And one of the things, again, that comes through is that, again, through governance, although there are slight variations in the governance model that we have for our ERGs, overall, again, the goals and direction that each ERG tries to achieve and hopes to attain are very similar. Well, we're also able to look and leverage the results for, we'll be able to start to see, again, around energy and where there is also confidence around business, but also what the ERG is looking to achieve. Those were, again, insights that we were able to take back to our national ERG co-chairs and start to have a conversation and dialogue around a combination of what the results from the survey was telling, what they're seeing on the ground and from their chapter colleagues, and then where we can actually then start to then move the dial and as far as, you know, the engagement, the collaboration, and then also its effectiveness in meeting what their plans are. So we have been leveraging this survey over the past 2 years to have those in-depth conversations. And again, one of the great outputs of participating in this survey is the detailed reporting, which I think even the 2-day conference doesn't do justice, because there is such a wealth of data and information that can be harnessed from the survey, which really helps also then our ERGs in formulating some of their forward-looking plans around activities, initiatives, and like I said, really looking to see ultimately where we would like to see is the synergies between the groups, because what we do know is that at the end of the day, ERGs are also fighting for that airtime, and so when you're looking to almost go against and trying to attract a lot of the same constituents, there's actually benefit on many scales and levels to be able to collaborate. So I think we're seeing those intersections coming together, and the applicability as well as to what one ERG may be doing from a mentoring perspective or a recognition and engagement perspective, more or less sometimes will fall in line to what the others are looking to do. So what we've been able to, again, is to leverage the information with the national teams for them to take through. And now what we've, again, in the last few months are starting to now dig a bit deeper into those results and look to see. And what I've shared here on this slide here is just a quick snapshot of some of the qualitative responses that we got from members, which again is helpful to know and get the insight, because as much as you can run employee opinion surveys or even the pulse checks that you do take from whether it's the ERG assessments for what's working for from a planning perspective, having this insight from members directly is, again, not only adds value to what we aim and hopefully achieve collectively, but also then puts some of that proactiveness and capability back to the ERG to have confidence in knowing that what they're planning, how they're engaging with members, but also within the company at large, is having an impact, and then where we can, as an organization, and specifically from my perspective on the diversity and inclusion standpoint, is how we can support them achieve that as well. And then, again, for us, there is a very great crossroads of this all rolling up to where we, again, organizationally are moving the dial for diversity and inclusion where we want to be moving, and the alignment towards our blueprint and our D&I North Star as well. So on that, I'll hand it back to Nora and Theresa, because I'm sure there probably are some more questions and more insights that you're probably wanting to get to, but happy to answer some. But if they're back to you.
Yeah, actually, there are a few questions in the chat box that you should be able to see. Do you see them at the bottom?
Yeah, let me just scan and scroll through.
So there's one from, actually there's one from Karina Kane saying, are promotions incorporated in the measurement of professional development? I don't know, that may be addressed to Theresa.
Yeah, just say from our perspective, we don't have that specific, not from this survey, but there are probably other ways or mechanisms that you could maybe extrapolate information from an internal back-end perspective. There was a question here, is that how do the ERG groups at RBC coordinate, align their goals to minimize conflict and competition? Love that question, and again, that's something that what we do as part of our ERG governance is, again, we work with the national co-chairs for each ERG to have them submit their annual plan a couple of quarters ahead. So we're planning ahead as everyone else does, and you would do for any other line of business. So we have, first of all, quarterly touch point calls with the national co-chairs, which, again, provide a good forum to check what the current pulse check is, but also then to see what is coming up. But the annual plan gets shared between the national co-chairs so that everybody can see what is coming on tap for the year ahead. And this is where, again, some of the robust conversations around looking to see where the intersectionalities are, but also the opportunity to collaborate and then not be repeating from a national perspective on priorities. And then the national teams will then cascade their plan and their goals to if they have where it's applicable to their regional chapters as well. What we're also hoping to do, again, is to be more, I think, engaged with our ERG family across the network. And so, again, whilst there are different priorities and expectation and goals for ERGs that are being managed and run in the U.S. or in the UK or in Asia, we will then at one stage, and again, we haven't quite got there yet, but it's an aspirational goal for that we can actually share on a broader scale what is happening from a national perspective, and then where potentially where there could be collaboration is again on specific days, and I'll use something that's coming up like International Women's Day, where we do share a lot of the resources and information with the ERGs across the network, and then there is a bit of a cross-collaboration as far as the resource and information being shared, and then potentially events happening simultaneously as well. So again, there's a good, I think, opportunity to share details and information, which if you have an internal mechanism to do that, whether it's through like something, like I said, through the Jive platform or Connect platform, or any other medium that you're using, information is a critical factor of not only sharing the message, but also getting the synergies as well.
Yeah, and there's another question for you. Let's see. Someone's asking, can you speak a bit about your national co-chair structure?
Yeah, so the governance is, from an ERG, is what we have. It started off at an executive sponsor level, so each ERG has executive sponsorship, which serves as not only providing guidance to the leadership cabinet of that ERG, but also provides the lens into the network to be able to carry and advocate for that ERG amongst from a not only executive circle, but also then from a broader community impact as well. And so we have two co-chairs of an ERG, and then they are supported by a national cabinet, which again, we provide some guidance around where we feel there should be some roles or positions to help that ERG set up for success. It could be around, for example, marketing, communications, event planning, membership engagement. So each ERG, again, has kind of a baseline as to what the cabinet should look like, and then they can tailor and customize those roles. And then the national teams have the broader view, and then as I mentioned, then they work with regional counterparts or local chapters, which again follow a very similar structure as far as leadership and governance around organizing themselves. And so there is then that continuous loop between enterprise, national, and regional or local for ongoing, because again, sometimes what certain regions or geographies across the country may be doing. It might be slightly different, but they dovetail into the overarching plan to what the national is doing. So that's how our ERGs are structured. On the Canadian side, on the U.S. side, it's somewhat similar, but it's more business-driven, so the business has a bit more of an engagement as far as the structure and composition, but follows essentially the same model and concept as well.
Yeah, so there's a question that was up earlier and came back again from, I think it's D.S. Shepard. So thank you. He or she is asking whether you have any rewards, and is opening it up to the rest of the community here. You might want to write in, but are there any rewards offered to ERG members? Do they get volunteer days, performance ratings, or anything else? So I'll just add real quick. I haven't seen a lot of individual rewards that people track, but getting more money for your ERG seems to be something that often happens, and people vie for that. So Ali, do you have a response to that one?
Yeah, so again, we don't have that particular element as far as rewards, but I mean the recognition is definitely obviously something that is meaningful for somebody to be involved in an ERG and be actively involved. So again, depending on the level of engagement, there definitely is, again, the role of the executive sponsor is a critical one at that, because then they're able to recognize, at least from a national perspective, and then most cases as well on the regional level, there is some level of executive or local regional office sponsorship of some kind of that ERG. So I think that definitely the recognition of effort is there. What we also encourage the active members of the ERG, especially when they're taking on those leadership roles, is to have the conversations as well with their direct manager to let them know that obviously they are involved in that ERG, and to in some cases it's beneficial to add into any performance management document or review documents that are being done, or annual reviews, but to factor in that
Briscoe
these are
teeth cleaned a few days ago, and the doctor was curious and wanted more information.
Like we may have some interference here.
Yeah, somebody's, I think, personal call is coming through.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I don't know
how to mute it.
Not sure how to mute that
either. I haven't heard
either.
anything since I actually had some surgery, but.
Okay, somebody's got their personal line calling through. You might want to mute it, mute your phone.
Okay, what do you guys care? I don't care. But if there is some rule procedure, I guess we need to.
Anyway, you can mute it, Nora.
Oh, I think we got it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah.
So I'll just say that, yeah, those annual review conversations or quarterly review conversations is definitely one way to get. Again, there's no direct compensation per se, but the recognition and acknowledgement of the effort. And again, those are also, again, in leadership roles or cabinet roles, those are development opportunities that are, again, highlighted to have impact for future career impact as well. And obviously, impact to the business, because I saw another question of like, do you tie it to anywhere around ROI or innovation impact? And I think, again, ERGs have been a great mechanism to get insights, whether it is, from certain constituents around how they feel, or what, where the business could be from almost somewhat of a, a pre-test, or getting a reaction to something that might be being developed or being reviewed or being discussed. And I think, again, that's the power of being able to tap into the employee resource group, is when you can get insights from not only a diverse group of individuals and employees that you have access to, but then to get those insights, it's having your own in-house market research group, which is invaluable, because you can pay substantial amounts of money to get external research, which, again, is completely valid and helpful, but to get a gut check internally is priceless. So I think, again, when you can call upon employee resource groups to do that, and again, we're starting to see more and more businesses being able to tap in to the ERG network and to leverage those insights, those learnings, and the thoughts that ERG members have. I think, again, a great, invaluable source for information that can only help and help you grow in any type of, again, whether it's could be a product or a thought leadership development as well.
Yeah, and I want to make one more comment on the ROI question. Learning how to do the ROI is really valuable, not just for the ERGs, but also for the leaders to take to their own jobs. And I know that we've done a couple workshops over the years at the summit on looking at ROI, and there's really simple ways to do it. It doesn't have to be complicated. And we talk about the mathematical ROI, where you can come up with those numbers, and then there's also a bucket of things that I call ROI stories. People want to know when you did A, taking action in time A, what happened to time B. And even if you don't have the math and the hard numbers, being able to give a logical story behind that is helpful. So there's really pretty simple ways to do the ROI work, and I would suggest it for anybody from a learning point of view. Okay, I think we had there's a couple other questions here. I'm just trying to get through them. Let's see. Here's one for you, Ali. Does RBC have a diversity metric in senior leadership performance management? And second, what is the criteria to be an ERG leader?
So with regards to metric, that is there a specific metric? There isn't specific, but there are opportunities to both from a leadership view, and then also how does that impact business, because it is, diversity inclusion is one of our values, and it's also built into what we have as part of our collective ambition, but also a leadership model. So there's opportunities on a regular basis for leaders to continue to look at that and see how that does an impact. The criteria for an ERG leader is, again, there's depending on where and how you're staffing, whether it's, again, regional, local, or perhaps at the national, but definitely when we look at from a national co-chair perspective, there are opportunities around, first of all, looking to see in your high potential pool of candidates to see if there are individuals that, again, could benefit but also add value from a leadership development perspective, and so that they bring those perspectives and the skill sets of where they are in their current career progression to be an ERG leader. Obviously, having the advocacy, but also being able to connect to the constituency as well is an important aspect of that as well. So again, it could be in some cases that they've already been engaged in some level or form in the particular ERG, and so there's a natural affinity, but also you see the progression and opportunity to provide that development opportunity to someone to take on that leadership role. So again, I think there are different criteria as far as how you would pick out, but none more different than any other type of leadership development opportunity, because again, when you put individuals into those roles, those are not only opportunity for a profile, but also to make an impact. And so that's it's a great, I would say, platform to also accelerate potential talent as well. So it's multiple avenues for you to do that.
Yeah, and there's a comment in here from someone at AT&T about the way that they're rewarding ERG members. I don't know if we want to unmute Mike if you're open for commenting, or you want me to just, I can read it, but is there a way we can get a hand? Can they wait? How do they do the hand, Nora? See if he wants to be unmuted. All right. So, oh, I see him here. Is he unmuted now? Yeah, Mike, I think you're unmuted if you want to comment on what AT&T is doing.
I'm on the computer, so I'm not sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thanks.
Yeah, so we have a conference every year, and ERGs are awarded. There's national awards, and then there's also local awards, and there's various types of awards. Some have impact to the business, or there might be an engagement one where they're doing actually surveys of the members to see their engagement and satisfaction in the ERGs. And then there's also a non-monetary individual awards where they're recognizing director level for their support of the ERGs. And then there's an individual award for, more like frontline management and other employees in terms of their engagement in the ERGs. And then somebody asked about promotions. I don't know that we measure it ourselves either, but I've seen firsthand where people have been promoted. There's somebody that was in charge of our XY generation ERG just a few years ago, and she was promoted to a director, and now she's an assistant vice president, and there's another one that was recently promoted from a frontline to a director level. So definitely have seen some nice promotions for people that are engaged in the ERGs and in leadership positions.
Yeah, thanks. We appreciate that, Mike. So, Ali, there's another interesting question here for you. So, and I think I've seen this challenge probably with most organizations. So the organization obviously is promoting diversity, and the question is, how do you bring that to the senior leadership team? Because, there might not be the kind of diversity at the top that you want. Any comments on what, you think you can do and other organizations can do in that respect?
Yeah, thanks, Theresa. Again, that's, something that the organization definitely looks at and continuing to use the D&I not only from a platform perspective, but again, we do, the DLC, the Diversity Leadership Council looks, at staffing rates and opportunity of the pipeline. And so definitely developing diverse talent is key, and, we see that across the various levels of the organization and building pipelines from obviously constituents from a variety of backgrounds and looking to build and develop that into the senior level. So absolutely, we continue to look at that. We continue to do that, and those opportunities to make sure that not only the pipeline is what would I say, robust, but also the opportunities are there as well. So yes, organizationally, we'll continue to do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some of the other companies that we've worked with are starting to think about the leadership role in ERGs as a not a grassroots effort, so the leaders don't get elected, but assigning leaders because that's a high potential position. So what are your thoughts on that, Ali?
It's again, to my earlier comment around, when we're looking at the how do you select ERG leaders, and again, that's definitely, again, an opportunity when we work with our partners across leadership development and other groups to help identify individuals that could, take on the leadership roles. Definitely, there's a correlation, or at least a collaboration between, identifying high potential talent that's coming through, as well as the existing pipeline. So again, ERGs are, I think, an excellent way to profile your talent. But again, like I said, to provide that kind of healthy training ground for, potential leaders and aspiring leaders to really, make a difference and add that extra opportunity for them to, also get presence, awareness, and engagement to leading the ERG, but also having the impact, as we said, around what they deliver to other employees and the impact it has to the organization. So again, it is an opportunity to develop the pipeline, but also feed the pipeline as well. So there's sometimes, again, you can't have enough ERGs to, satisfy the pipeline. So again, it's well, one thing we do is usually have a 2 to 3 year rotation in the ERG role. So again, there is that healthy but somewhat time-boxed sprint for the individual to learn and develop, and then move on to hopefully bigger and other opportunities that they will be maybe profiled for, and at the same time provide the laneway for others to come through and then also go through that enriched experience as well.
So I have a question for you, Ali. In the beginning, we talked about the pros and cons, and that there are people questioning ERGs. And, there's always a group that says, hey, it's not fair because there's not an ERG for me. And I'm wondering, are you getting any pushback in your organization to change ERGs? And you're hearing any of that, and not necessarily negative, but more con argument?
Yeah, no, so I haven't. We haven't seen it directly or indirectly, and again, I'm pretty sure this is universal as far as employee resource groups, work and from a best practices. But ERGs are open to everybody, and so you benefit not only from either being a constituent or having an affinity to a particular group, but you're being the ally as well, or again, or even interested. So I think ERGs in that way are set up for everybody that way. And I think, again, there's also the opportunity to, it's not that you have to have an ERG for everything and everyone. And so there, again, where there is a need and then the groundswell for a particular, constituency or group to form, again, sometimes that happens organically, and sometimes there is, again, based on the structure of ERGs that we have, there is a governance and a model to follow. And so sometimes groups would prefer to be, what I would call an affinity group, and so still operate very much in the form and the structure of an ERG, but without the formal governance. And so what we do see, and we have that there are a number of what I will label as affinity groups within the organization, which again look and feel like an ERG. They don't have that official status, but again, that's another way of incorporating and being able to get different elements into the network. So again, when we talk about that healthy foundation of that D&I network, there are different components and elements that go into that. So obviously ERGs are definitely one, but I would equally add that affinity groups, and again, depending on whether they're formalized or informal in your organization, add to the richness and the conversation of advancing inclusion in your organization.
Yeah, it's interesting. When we had a session last year at the ERG Summit on ally groups, and we learned in a lot of organizations there were more allies than there were members. So it does seem that over the years ERGs have really opened themselves up, and probably because there's so much learning that comes out of it. We have one more question in 3 minutes. So this one asks, what type of activities do the ERGs do? And I know that's a really big question. So maybe what are some of the top activities, Ali, in your organization? That's another call in another day in its entirety, but in very 90 seconds, I think mentorship programs have been very popular, but also good deliveries for the ERGs. So they've focused on the elements where they can gain informal or formal mentorships, through reverse mentoring. That's been important. I think the raising the awareness around specific topics of conversation. So again, when there are specific, whether those are recognition days or like I said, International Women's Day, or right now we're in Black History Month. So again, the ERGs are again collaborating, coming together to have the dialogue and conversation beyond just the an event to recognize the day, but it's really about the learning. So the things around like unconscious bias, or being the ally, or being how do we change perspectives, mindsets, and
have informed, conversations about topics. So I think they are focusing very much on the application and the proactiveness of that learning, and really leveraging then either again the day or the theme and the constituents to really again reach the broader network, but also be able to again, what I would stress is like the advancement of inclusion. So again, not only internally, but how does that translate externally? And the other great work the ERGs continue to do, which they've always kind of built into their planning and their application, is the community involvement engagement. So again, very much so on the boots on the ground at the local, regional level, is that there is strong affinity to reach out to local organizations, charities, and groups to collaborate, partner where they can, and again to really bring the opportunities that not only from an ERG membership perspective can bring, but also then being able to give back to the community where you live and work. So I think there's a strong component of that is also built into what we see the ERG is doing, which is again a great way to not only share the story, but also be able to make an impact to your local community as well.
Great. Well, it is, we're at the end of our webinar, and I want to thank you, Ali, and thank you, Nora, for helping us, and thank everybody in the line. There was one question about how we can continue the conversation, and we'll send you information about a LinkedIn group that we have, so that's one possibility. And Ali, you gave me some ideas about how your groups are connected. Maybe we can do a Jive session or something like that for our external, for these stakeholders. So to everybody in the line, thank you so much. We hope to see you in Seattle on the Amazon campus for 2018 ERG Leadership Summit. And again, thank you and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.